Welcome back to Talk Tickers, the show where we dig through these earnings calls so you don't have to. And today, we are diving deep into Novartis's Q4 2024 performance. And they're calling this year one of their strongest ever. And honestly, looking at these numbers, I can see why they're so excited.
Definitely not just hype either.
Yeah.
We're talking a 12% jump in sales and a 22% growth in core operating income. I mean, that kind of performance really sets them up to exceed that 40% core operating margin that they're aiming for by 2027.
Okay, so they're clearly doing something right. But let's unpack this a little. What's really driving this success? Is it just across-the-board strength, or are there specific areas that really popped?
Well, it's a little bit of both. You know their priority brands, the real heavy hitters in their portfolio. Entresto, Cosentyx, Kisqali, and Scemblix, all of those are showing some pretty significant growth. But to really get the full picture, we need to look at each one individually because they all have some pretty fascinating stories.
So let's start with Entresto then, their heart failure medication. That was a big winner this year, right?
It was a huge winner. They brought in $7.8 billion in sales for the full year. That's a 31% increase. And what's really interesting here is it's not just concentrated in one region. We're seeing strong uptake in both the U.S. and international markets, which really speaks to, its global appeal and the potential.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
Especially considering, those whispers you hear about Entresto facing a patent cliff pretty soon. So how are they addressing that?
Yeah, you're right. That U.S. patent for Entresto set to expire mid-2025. Which could definitely open the door to generic competition. But Novartis is not just sitting back and waiting. They are preparing for this transition, focusing on growth in markets where they still have that patent protection, like Europe and Japan. Remember, the U.S. currently accounts for roughly half of Entresto's global sales. So maintaining that momentum elsewhere is going to be crucial.
Yeah, like they're playing offense and defense at the same time. Now, let's talk about Kisqali, their breast cancer treatment. That one's been making headlines, hasn't it?
Oh, Kisqali is on fire. Sales skyrocketed 49% this year, hitting the $3 billion mark. Big part of this is their performance in both the metastatic and early breast cancer settings. So they're gaining traction across a wider spectrum of patients, and that's driving serious revenue.
And wasn't there a recent legal victory that gives them even more runway with Kisqali?
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking about that recent settlement. That secured Kisqali's U.S. patent protection until at least the first quarter of 2031. So that legal win removes a major cloud of uncertainty and paves the way for continued dominance in a pretty lucrative market.
It seems like they're turning these potential setbacks into opportunities.
Yeah, pick up pack.
Strong sales from existing products. That's only part of the story, right? What about their pipeline and their future prospects? They've been making some interesting moves in the world of gene therapy, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. Their gene therapy pipeline is one of the most exciting things to watch in the entire pharmaceutical industry right now. One key development is the positive data they released. OAV101IT, which is an intrathecal version of their existing gene therapy for spinal muscular atrophy, Zolgensma.
Okay, I need a quick breakdown here. Yeah. Zolgensma is already on the market, right? So what's so special about this new version?
Okay, so Zolgensma is a one-time gene therapy that has been incredibly successful for treating SMA, but it's given intravenously. OAV101IT, however, is delivered directly into the spinal cord, which is a game changer for patients who aren't eligible for the traditional intravenous delivery.
So this could open up treatment to a whole new group of patients who were previously excluded. I mean, that's a huge potential market.
Exactly. And the fact that it's still a one-time treatment could significantly improve the quality of life for these patients. It's really a testament to Novartis's commitment to pushing the boundaries
of medical innovation. It's clear that they're not just relying on their existing products to drive growth. They are actively shaping the future of medicine with these gene therapy advancements. But what about their other pipeline developments? Are there any non-gene therapy areas they're focusing on?
Yeah, they're certainly not putting all their eggs in the gene therapy basket, although that is a major focus. One notable development is the acquisition of Vootopian, which is a potential first-in-class oral therapy for Huntington's disease.
Now, Huntington's disease is a devastating neurodegenerative disorder, right? If I remember correctly. There are very limited treatment options currently available.
That's right. There are no disease-modifying therapies for Huntington's disease currently on the market. Existing treatments primarily focus on managing symptoms, but Vootopian has the potential to change that.
How does Vootopian work, and what makes it so different from the current standard of care?
Well, Vootopian targets the underlying genetic cause of Huntington's disease, It works by reducing the production of a harmful protein called Huntington, which is responsible for the progressive degeneration of brain cells. So it's a completely different approach compared to simply managing the symptoms.
So instead of just addressing the symptoms, they're aiming to modify the course of the disease itself. That's a bold approach.
It is. Early clinical trials have shown some promising results, and Novartis is pushing forward with larger scale studies to confirm its efficacy and safety if successful. Vootopian could be a landmark treatment for Huntington's patients and a major win for Novartis.
So it seems like Novartis is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
They've got a mix of high-performing existing drugs, a robust pipeline of innovative therapies, and they're making strategic acquisitions to bolster their future prospects. But
Of course, no company is without its challenges, right? That's right. Despite all the positive news, there's still that looming patent cliff for Entresto in the U.S. Plus, the pharmaceutical industry is notoriously unpredictable. Clinical trials can fail, regulatory hurdles can pop up, and unexpected competition can emerge, seemingly out of nowhere.
right, so while their current performance is stellar, it's important to remember that the future is never guaranteed. But before we get signing too deep into the potential risks and challenges, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into their financial outlook for 2025. And of course, cook up one of our signature, this is not financial advice, trade ideas.
Sounds good. All right, welcome back to Talk Tickers. It is time to put on our speculative hats and dive into our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, where we take everything we've learned and cook up a trade idea that is both audacious and, well, let's just say hypothetically plausible.
That's right, folks. Remember, this is purely for entertainment purposes. We are not financial advisors, and you should absolutely not base any actual trades on our whimsical musings.
We're just exploring possibilities here, using Novartis as our springboard. So with that crucial disclaimer out of the way, what kind of trade idea has sparked your imagination after dissecting this earnings call?
Well, the thing that keeps coming back to me is they're all in bet on gene therapy. I mean, it feels like a massive gamble. But one of the potential to completely transform the pharmaceutical landscape, they've got Zolgensma for developing this intrathecal version, OAV101IT, and then there's the Vootopian acquisition for Huntington's. It's like they're building an entire ecosystem around this cutting-edge technology.
You're definitely not dipping their toes in the water. They are diving headfirst into gene therapy, and that boldness could translate into a very interesting trade setup. How about this? A long-term call option on Novartis, betting that their gene therapy dominance will drive their stock price significantly higher over time.
I like the thinking. So a long-term call option gives you the right, but not the obligation, to buy their stock at a set price in the future. So if Novartis's stock takes off, because their gene therapy bets pay off, you're in a great position to profit. But let's spice things up a bit. How can we make this trade idea a little more talk ticker-esque?
Okay, here's where we get a little wild. What if we pair that long-term call option on Novartis with a short-term put option on one of their competitors, who are heavily reliant on traditional therapies for either SMA or Huntington's disease?
Now you're talking. Explain this one slowly for our listeners who might not be options trading aficionados.
Okay, so a put option gives the buyer the right to sell a stock at a certain price by a certain date by selling or writing a put option. You're basically taking the other side of that bet. You're essentially wagering that the competitor's stock price won't drop below a certain level.
So if their competitor's stock plummets, because gene therapies become the preferred treatment and patients and doctors move away from older drugs, you stand to make money on the put option, and that profit could cushion any potential losses if the Novartis call option doesn't take off as quickly as you hoped.
You got it. It's a high-risk, high-reward play. That's essentially betting on a paradigm shift in how we treat these serious diseases. You're essentially shorting the old guard and going long on the disruptor.
Now that's the kind of audacious trade idea we like to cook up here at Talk Tickers. But again, and I can't emphasize this enough, this is purely hypothetical.
We're just two finance nerds having some fun and exploring possibilities. Do not go making any real trades based on our crazy schemes.
Right. You need to do your own research, understand the potential downsides and risks involved, and maybe talk to an actual financial advisor before making any real-life investment decisions.
Always, always do your due diligence. Now, with that very important disclaimer out of the way, let's shift gears a bit and circle back to Novartis's overall financial picture. We talked about the excitement around their gene therapy pipeline, but what's our outlook for the coming year? Especially with that Entresto patent cliff looming in the U.S.
Well, what struck me during the earnings call was their unwavering confidence. They're projecting mid to high single-digit sales growth and high single to low double-digit core operating income growth in 2025. It's almost like they're saying, bring on the generics, we've got this.
It's definitely a bold projection, especially considering the potential hit they could take from generic competition for Entresto. What do you think? Gives them such confidence?
I think it's probably a combination of factors. First, their portfolio is pretty diverse. They're not a one-trick pony. They've got strong performers across various therapeutic areas, so they're not overly reliant on any single drug.
Yeah, that diversification is key, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, where patent cliffs are an ever-present threat. But beyond their existing portfolio, they've also got some exciting new launches that are exceeding expectations.
Right. Kisqali's performance in the early breast cancer setting. It's a big win for them. And the upcoming launch of PSMA4 for Pluvicto in the pre-taxane setting for prostate cancer is generating a lot of buzz. So they're not just sitting back. They're actively driving growth with new products and indications.
And we can't forget about that robust pipeline of therapies in development, including those potentially game-changing gene therapies we discussed. It's like they're playing 3D chess while their competitors are stuck on checkers.
Yeah, they're definitely playing the long game. It seems like they're focused on building a sustainable business with multiple avenues for growth, rather than just chasing short-term profits.
It's a smart strategy, especially in such a dynamic and competitive industry. But of course, no investment is without its risks, even with their diverse portfolio, successful new launches, and promising pipeline. There are always potential headwinds they'll need to navigate.
Exactly. Clinical trials can fail. Regulatory approvals can be delayed. Unexpected side effects can emerge. And competitors can always come up with their own innovative therapies.
It's a constant game of adaptation and innovation in the pharmaceutical world. But overall, I think Novartis has a solid track record, a well-defined strategy, and they're clearly not afraid to take calculated risks.
I agree. They're definitely a company to watch. And their bold moves into gene therapy could have ripple effect across the entire industry. But before we get too carried away with our predictions, let's wrap up with one final thought for our listeners to chew on. We've talked a lot about Novartis's commitment to innovation and their bold moves in gene therapy.
Yeah, for sure.
But the question some investors might be asking is, at what cost? I mean, developing and launching gene therapies is incredibly expensive, and there are no guarantees that these treatments will be commercially successful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They are pouring a ton of resources into these cutting-edge therapies, but the payoff is still uncertain. What if the market doesn't adopt them as quickly as they hope? Or what if, unexpected challenges arise?
Right, and even if these gene therapies are successful, pricing is going to be a major hurdle. I mean, these are potentially one-time cures, not chronic treatments. So how do you price that? It's a completely different economic model than traditional pharmaceuticals.
It really is. It's uncharted territory for everyone involved.
It's a high-stakes game they're playing. They can revolutionize medicine. It comes with substantial financial risk.
Oh, absolutely. There's also the potential for disruption. If these gene therapies are as effective as they hope, they could significantly reduce the demand for traditional drugs, which would impact Novartis's other business segments. It's a double-edged sword.
So investors really need to weigh the potential rewards against, the inherent risks. It's not a simple buy and hold situation.
Not at all. This is a company in transition, and the next few years will be critical in determining whether their gene therapy gamble pays off.
It makes you wonder, does their strong financial outlook for 2025 fully factor in these potential challenges? Or are they being
overly optimistic? It's something for investors to
consider carefully.
Definitely transparency around, their gene therapy spending, their pricing strategies, and the potential impact on other business segments is going to be crucial for investors to make those informed decisions.
I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about today. We've covered Novartis's impressive financial performance, their promising pipeline, and the potential risks and rewards associated with their aggressive push into gene therapy.
Yeah, and we even threw out a pretty wild, purely hypothetical trade idea. But again, folks, this is not financial advice. Do your own research. Consult with a professional before making any investment decisions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Always remember, folks, in the world of investing, knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And that's what Talk Tickers is all about. We break down the complexities of earnings calls so you can stay informed and make smart decisions.
Until next time, keep those tickers talking and stay curious.
Happy investing, everyone.